the committee chairperson. But they are also accompanied by Ms. Naomi T. Simeon, Deputy Director, Habitat Namibia. Mr. Simata Silume, Chief Parliamentary Clerk. Ms. Priscilla Kulula, Parliamentary Clerk. On behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I welcome them to the Senate and I wish them well for the remainder of their stay. Thank you. Honorable Senators, I have a further communication to make on the visiting students and teachers from Kenya Relief Academy School, Migori County. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting students and teachers from Kenya Relief Academy School, Migori County. In our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Papers to be laid today. We have several honorable members. The first one is Majority Leader, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Council of Governors Secretariat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, Wednesday, 1st August 2018. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the Council of Governors Secretariat for the year ended 30th June 2017. I thank you.
Very well. The next paper to be laid is a paper by Senator Dr. Alice Milgo, MP, report of the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, Wednesday, 1st August 2018, report of the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on the 2018 Commonwealth Games held on Gold Coast, Australia, from 4th to 15 April 2018. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Dr. Milgo. Finally, honorable senators, we have a paper to be laid by Senator Dr. Christopher Lagat, MP, report of the Standing Committee on Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, Wednesday, 1st August 2018, report of the Standing Committee on Education on the TFED conference held in Victoria, Canada, from 27 April to 2nd May 2018.
Very well. I will discretionarily allow the laying of two other papers that do not appear on the on the order paper for today. Senator Haniri.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you for your indulgence. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, Wednesday, 1st August 2018. This is the report of the Parliamentary Service Committee.
Very well. I confused it with something else. Order, senators. Senator Mbito, we've already called out the order on petitions, but you can lay your report now.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following petition report on the table of the Senate today, Wednesday, 1st of August 2018, the report of the Standing Committee on Health on a petition to the Senate by Mr. Gwada Ogot concerning the decriminalization of marijuana. I thank you.
Order. Order, Senator Kabaka. Order. Order, senators. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Order, senators. We have a notice of motion by Senator Dr. Alice Mirgo. Are you ready? Order, Senator, there is a mic in front of you. Why are you using gestures?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I wasn't sure, but then I'm very ready now.
Okay, proceed.
Okay, I wish to keep notice of the following motion. Report of the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on the 2018 Commonwealth Games, that this House knows the report of the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on the 2018 Commonwealth Games held in Gold Coast, Australia from 4 to 15 April 2018.
Very well. The next notice of motion is from Senator Dr. Christopher Lagat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to give notice of the following motion, that this House notes the report of the Standing Committee on Education on the TFET conference held in Victoria, Canada from 27 April to 2nd May 2018. Thank you.
Very well. Senate Majority Leader, do you have a notice of motion? No. Chairperson, Senate Standing Committee on Education. I think that we've already had that. Chairperson, Senate Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs, and Human Rights. Senator Cherargei. Vice Chair. So it's deferred. Deferred. Next order.
Order number 7, statements.
Very well. Senators, we have come to the order on statements. We will have 2 statements today under Standing Order 46-2A, and we will keep to the tradition of spending adequate but measured time on this item so that we can also address other issues on the order paper for today. So there are 2 statements. I'm going to call out the first one in a short while. There is a 10-minute limit, but given the public interest in both statements which are being issued, I'll allow not more than 15 minutes in each case for comments, but nothing beyond that. 15 minutes for each of the statements, outside the time used by the senator reading the statement. Senator Haniri.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to thank you for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Orders 46-2A, I rise to make a statement on a county issue relating to the underutilization of development funds at the counties, massive corruption, and alleged diversion of public funds to personal accounts by some county officials. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Constitution of Kenya 2010 has established 2 levels of government, namely the national government and the 47 county governments. Under this arrangement, there is a bicameral national parliament made up of the Senate and the National Assembly, and the 47 county assemblies. Experiences the world over show that such arrangement improves the quality of the legislative output and enables better service delivery. In our case, service delivery in the country has improved to some extent, and Kenyans can attest to closer, better, and expanded political leadership since 2013, when the provisions relating to the legislature under the current dispensation started being implemented in earnest. Mr. Speaker, sir, since the inception of county assemblies after the election of 4th March 2013, there have been great strides towards entrenching operations and improving performance of these important legislative bodies in the country. The 11th Parliament Senate did roll out numerous programs towards capacitating and entrenching county assemblies. The leadership, staff, committees, and members of the assemblies were involved in benchmarking visits to the Senate. The Senate Speaker then ensured the establishment of the Senate Liaison Office, an exchange program for the induction of various county assemblies to the legislative operations of our legislature. Mr. Speaker, the County Assembly of Vihiga in particular is one of the beneficiaries of the Senate programs. During the 11th Parliament, during the 11th Senate, 5 delegations from the County Assembly of Vihiga visited the Senate for benchmarking. Senate records, which I have had the benefit of seeing, bear evidence that many other county assemblies benefited through the Senate program. Mr. Speaker, the Senate has also initiated and operationalized the annual legislative summit, whose central objective is promoting engagements between the Senate, County Assembly, and the relevant stakeholders in the devolution agenda. Further, Mr. Speaker, sir, I have established that a good number of senators have also taken the initiative to address their county assemblies pursuant to Standing Orders 241-1 of the Senate Standing Orders and the relevant provisions of the rules of procedure of the respective county assemblies. For Vihiga, Mr. Speaker, I have personally made it an annual engagement. These engagements collectively have ensured the improvement and growth of not only the county assembly's performance, but also county governments as a whole. Mr. Speaker, sir, challenges abound, and at some point, county governments who are accused of having embraced corruption as if it was one of the devolved functions. The county assemblies were also entangled in the corruption web where governors were alleged to have bought their loyalty and crippled oversight. Today, Mr. Speaker, I stand here proud of the County Assembly of Vihiga as the members have performed their oversight role extremely well. At the county, my constituents refer to me as Baba County because they understand the fact that the Senate is the house that debates and passes the county allocation of revenue bill that outlines how counties share the total allocated revenue from the national government. The Senate has always ensured that counties get the best bargain in the allocation of revenue whenever considering the division of revenue bill. Senators may recall that the last 11th Parliament Senate went up to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court, to fight for the involvement of the Senate in the division of revenue between the two levels of government. On my part as the Senator for Vihiga, I have on numerous occasions personally raised questions on the delayed disbursement of funds to the counties, and the National Treasury has responded, and in most cases, favorably. Mr. Speaker, sir, it pains my heart when reports emerge that counties are mismanaging the money disbursed to them. It is very wrong for a majority of citizens in the counties to continue enduring poor sanitation, poor rural roads infrastructure, below standards health services, and increasing poverty levels, yet county governments receive billions of shillings every financial year to tackle these problems. I commend the County Assembly of Vihiga for setting in motion the process of investigating corrupt county executive members at the county on Monday, 23rd July 2018. I stand proud of my county assembly for being steadfast in pointing out corruption. For the record, in the 11th Parliament Senate, the county forwarded a petition to the Senate, which was deliberated on, concluded, and reported its finding to this House, and in addition forwarded the recommendations to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. I call upon the current Director of Public Prosecutions to have a look at both the petition and the Senate report and take necessary action to implement the recommendations. Mr. Speaker, sir, As I stand here today, I want to encourage members of the Vihiga County Assembly to remain steadfast in ensuring accountability of the county executive. The fight against corruption is not going to be easy. Indeed, it is bound to continue being complex, tough, messy, and dangerous, given that corruption is tempting and fights back viciously. I urge the MCAs not to give in to compromise. Above all, they should be fair, just, and in the committees as they carry out the investigations. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to urge my colleague, individual senators, to take time and investigate the absorption of money allocated to their county governments. I have noted with dismay that majority of the counties failed to utilize development allocation, which some managing to utilize a paltry 20%. Mr. Speaker, in my case, the Vihiga County, they managed to utilize only 23% of the development funds of the 2017-2018 county approved budget. While at the time utilizing this is a shame to say the least. I want to call upon the Senate to collaborate with the county assemblies to ensure that development money is utilized properly, despite the fact that the National Assembly denied this House its deserved monitoring and evaluation funds as part of the national government. I urge the County Public Accounts and Investments Committee to vigilantly and diligently execute its oversight role and bring timely and regular reports to this House for consideration. Mr. Speaker, sir, honorable members, lastly, it is no secret that the fight on corruption has picked momentum in the recent times. This is encouraging, and I congratulate the President, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, and the former Prime Minister, Raila Odinga, for demonstrating their personal commitment to this process during the famed handshake on the 9th March 2018. The offices of the Auditor General, the Director of Public Prosecution, and the Criminal Investigation Department, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and all the other agencies involved have now received the political goodwill that has been lacking for the longest time. Hence, they will have no more excuses under the guise of lack of support from the top. I call upon them to do their work without fear or favor. All levels and sizes of corruption must be investigated, punished, and the money reimbursed to the government for the benefit of Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, sir, this fight on corruption is a fight for all Kenyans, and for once we have the opportunity to cut off this cancer from our country and be on the right side of history. We all have a role to play. We all must play that role. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Very well. Senator Wetangula. Order Senator Wetangula for 1 minute. Just resume your seat. Order Senators, I have a short communication to make on the visiting students and teachers of Barsaloi Primary School, Samburu County. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting students and teachers from Barsaloi Primary School, Samburu County. In our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. Senator Wetangula, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll join the distinguished senator for Vihiga in sounding an alarm too on the issues he has raised. In just a minute, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge the House, through the Committee of Finance, whose chair is sitting right in front of me, Mr. Speaker, to take cue from this statement and address three things and bring a comprehensive report to this House. Number one, the issue of pending bills, which each county is now under a heavy weight of. Number two, the issue of the lack of absorption capacity by counties in absorbing the little money that we give them. Mr. Speaker, they get just 9% of the national budget, and they can't absorb it. And number three, Mr. Speaker, the gross mismanagement of resources through county activities in the name of corruption. I finish, Mr. Speaker, by lauding at least the renewed energy in the war against corruption. I've seen in my county the wheelbarrow culprits were convicted and sentenced, although the masterminds are still walking free. And Mr. Speaker, we want to see that those who aid, abet crime are dealt with in the same manner as the criminals themselves.
What is it, Senator Outa?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, is the senator for Bungoma in order to tell this honorable House that he knows the culprits of the mastermind of the golden wheelbarrow?
Yes, Senator Wetangula.
Mr. Speaker, in the book of Matthew, chapter 27, verse 17, a question was asked whether this gentleman called Cleopas was the only stranger in Jerusalem. Is the distinguished senator for Kisumu the only stranger in this house?
Senator Outa, are you the only stranger in this house? Are you a stranger In any case,
I'm not a stranger, but I need to be
because
informed.
if you are a stranger, you are not even supposed to be in this chamber.
I'm not a stranger. The stranger could be, today I could have seen the Senator Gideon Moy.
Order.
Senator Gideon Moy could be a stranger.
Order, Senator Uta. What is it, Senator Gideon Moy?
You know, Mr. Speaker, it is a well-known fact which may have eluded my distinguished colleague that the business of the House is conducted in committees and not tanga-tangaring around the corridors of...
Order, Senator Moy. Order. Senator Moy, is your insinuation that no business is conducted in this chamber? You should have responded. You know, the accusation against you by Senator Outa is that you are a stranger in this house. That is the issue. That is the issue, because if you are a stranger, then you are not supposed to be here.
Very true, Mr. Speaker. You, especially you and the members know that I'm not a stranger in this house. I was here while the distinguished senator, I think, I don't know, he was jobless, I don't know where, before he made his way to this house. So, no, yes, I'm not a stranger, and happy to see you all again. Thank you.
So, Senator Moy, you are still the member of this house for Baringo County.
Not only that, Mr. Speaker, I'm the member for, chairman for ICT. I'm the chairman of Chamachetu Chabama Nababa.
Order, Senator. All right, let the matter rest there. All right. Now, in light of Senator Watangula, had you concluded? Yes. Thank you. I'll give one other senator on that statement, because contrary to the information I had, we had actually approved 2 more statements, so we have more statements than I thought. So I will not give more than 2 speakers after each of the statements. So Senator Wetangula has spoken, so I'll give the next opportunity on that particular statement to Senator Abshiro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to stand up to congratulate Senator Kaniri on his statement, but also I'd like to support counties. Mr. Speaker, we've always talked about counties not having capacity in certain areas. Mr. Speaker, the SRC capped county employments or county positions in many areas, including that of research, including that of finance officers, lots of issues around the capacity in terms of the human resource of counties that was capped. Now, we also know that people need hands to implement some of these projects. I know we are juxtapositioning this with the recurrent expenditure, but recurrent expenditure doesn't really sometimes require a lot of implementation capacity or implementation hands. But counties are really suffering from lack of the numbers of people and the lack of numbers of officers that are supposed to do some of this work. So even as we say that the absorption capacity is low, can this house also support counties to have the requisite capacity in terms of the people to do the work and to oversee some of the projects that they're supposed to implement? Mr. Speaker, this morning, this house was there discussing ward funds. The ward funds are supposed to push down development funds to the ward level.
Order, Senators. Order, Senator Lagat and company.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for protecting me. Now, we had legislation in front of this House to push down funds to the lowest levels of service delivery in the counties, namely the wards. What we have discussed this morning is that a lot of areas are against, a lot of institutions at the national level are against this. And what we're saying is that if we had cascaded some of these funds and provided counties the requisite capacity to implement some of these projects, perhaps we wouldn't be dealing with the lack of absorption of funds. So even as we talk of corruption and other things, let's not forget that this House is supposed to also support the capacity of counties to absorb, and that includes providing them with the necessary people to do the work. On the other hand, Mr. Speaker, we're aware that sometimes disbursements don't go out at the right time, and big capital development projects require time to implement. So even as we say, people didn't absorb and they have absorbed 23% or less, let's also look at the financial fiscal cycle and the disbursement schedules that go to counties. I know at the beginning of this year, counties were crying for funds, and they did not get it in good time until very late towards the end of the fiscal year, and therefore their capacity to implement some of these projects, which take time, was largely affected and limited. So as much as, of course, we all support the fight against corruption, both at national and county levels, this House has the obligation to protect counties and therefore must. And oversight is not just about ensuring that, stewardship and catching the thieves. It's also about ensuring some measures are put in place in advance to ensure that we have, proactive measures to ensure capacity for absorption is put in place, not just to go at the end of the fiscal cycle and say, oh, money was not taken. But what did we do as this House to ensure money is dispersed on time?
Thank you. The next statement is from Senator Chebeni. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish, pursuant to Standing Order 46.2a, I rise to make a statement regarding the celebration of International Youth Day, scheduled for 10th of August 2018 in the National Assembly chambers. Mr. Speaker, I wish to inform this House that this day is a commemoration of International Youth Day set up by the Cabinet Secretary for the Public Service Youth and Gender to recognize the role of the youth in nation building. Mr. Speaker, the theme for this year's fete is safe spaces for youth. This theme resonates well with the government's commitment to ensure that the youth are accorded a platform to engage in meaningful discussions with stakeholders so as to better its service delivery to the youth. It is worth noting that the youth need to be engaged in the Building Bridges initiative and the Big Four agenda discussions, in which they are conspicuously missing, so as to ensure that the government policies are inclusive of the youth who are trustees of the future of this country. The event will offer an opportunity for the youth and the legislature to engage and develop a clear roadmap towards harnessing the demographic dividend that the youth provide. Moreover, it will open up the legislature as a safe civic space for the youth of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is for this reason that I seek your indulgence to make an appeal to members of this House to sponsor at least 2 youths, male and female, from each county across the country to come and celebrate the event to be held on 10th August 2018 at the National Assembly chambers. Finally, Honorable Speaker, members, let me thank you for your commitment towards ensuring that the International Youth Day is not only a success, but also the start of a journey towards making Kenya a youth-friendly society. I thank you.
Order, Senator Cheruiyot. Order. And the Senator for Kajiado. You don't walk into the chamber and start greeting colleagues Not even quietly, you are almost clapping hands. Senator Vocajado. Very well. Other senators, I have the following communications to make. The first one, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting students and teachers from Sitwoto Primary School, Elgeyo Marakwet County. In our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. The second communication, honorable senators, is that I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting students and teachers from Chop Primary School, Elgeyo Marakwet County. In our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. The last but not least communication, honorable senators, is to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon of visiting students and teachers from St. Camilla Academy School, Baringo County. In our tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. Very well. Senator Malala.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to support my colleague, Honorable Mercy Chebeni, for her very exhaustive statement that she just made pertaining the Youth International Day. I want to, first of all, say that I'm a proud senator who is a youth, and I want to say that we are the youth.
Order. Proceed, Senator Malala.
I
was
know.
creating order for you to proceed.
I want to repeat that I am a youth. I was born in 1985, June 30th. And I am a youth, and I'm a proud youth to be here. Mr. Speaker, I can already see the enemies of the youth starting to
Order,
shout.
Senator. Order, Senator. Are there enemies of the youth in this chamber? Or are they outside?
They are outside, Mr. Speaker, but they have
But
sent
you can't see them.
They have sent the agents
But
here.
you cannot see them. If they are outside the chamber, you cannot see them.
Okay, Mr. Speaker.
Just say they are enemies, but they are out of jurisdiction, and
Yes.
they exist.
Yes, we have the invisible and the visible enemies. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to appreciate that the youth form a bulk of the Kenyan population. But it is very sad in the current dispensation that the youth of this country are not being given the focus and the attention they deserve, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you will find that when a youth completes his formal education and wants to pursue his career, you will find that we have a lot of obstacles on their way, Mr. Speaker. An innocent, welcome, Honorable Maura.
Order, Senator, that is not your business. Order.
Thank you.
Order, Senator.
Yes.
You are out of order.
Yeah. True, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Senator
You
was
are
very
out
colorful.
of order, Senator Malala.
Okay. So, Mr. Speaker, just to continue with my contribution, we have a lot of obstacles in the path of a youth who is pursuing his career. When a youth goes for an interview, he is asked a lot of questions and a lot of documentation which hinder their dreams, Mr. Speaker. A youth from university, for instance, will be asked for 10 years experience. How will a youth who is just from university get 10 years experience for him to get a job? Mr. Speaker, the same youth will be asked to produce KRA clearance certificate. He has never earned any money. He has never done any business. Why do you demand KRA clearance from a student who has just completed school. That youth will be required to produce a certificate of good conduct. Mr. Speaker, our youth are not criminals. Why do you ask for a certificate of good conduct to a law-abiding citizen like a youth? And yet we know thieves in this country who do not produce certificate of good conduct.
Senator Malala, is your case that anybody below that 5 years cannot commit a crime?
No, I'm just trying to build my foundation on how the youth face obstacles before they get employment, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even in this parliament, Mr. Speaker, youth-related issues are not handled seriously. The other day, you saw they reduced the budget for the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, the NYS. Why do we reduce budgets for the youth-oriented organization? And yet, we have organizations which have a lot of corruption, and their budgets are not reducing in every financial year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, however, I want to say that our Constitution provided for a platform for us to nurture youthful leadership. I want to appreciate that Article 176 of this Constitution established the county assemblies. And in establishing the county assemblies, it brought leadership nearer the youth in the grassroots. And I would want, as Mr. Speaker, to encourage more youth, and as a young legislator, to encourage more youth to vie for the position of members of county assembly. And Mr. Speaker, yesterday, while I was following the proceedings in the National Assembly, I was aggrieved by the fact that certain leaders in the National Assembly believe that the position of a member of county assembly is a village position, is a position for those people who are not informed. I want to state here categorically, Mr. Speaker, that the position of a member of county assembly is a distinguished position, is a platform whereby young people can exercise their leadership position. Yesterday, Honorable Adel Duale, the leader of majority in this.
Order, Senator. You are aware about the standing orders. Order, Senator. Resume your seat. I have not, order, Senator Malala. I have not asked you not to mention anybody. I have just asked you, you can mention anybody, but within the standing orders.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to say that I know that while mentioning names, we must substantiate. Mr. Speaker, the National Assembly Hansard is very clear. I've gone through it today morning, and it's a public document. And I want to make reference to the National Assembly Hansard that was debated yesterday, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Adel Duale demeaned Cleophas Malala at the Center for Kakamega, calling him that I am a mere MCA who was elected to come to Senate by mistake. Mr. Speaker, averagely, Mr. Speaker, a member of county assembly in Kenya is elected by 3,000, 4,000 votes, Mr. Speaker. I am proud to be a member of county assembly in the year 2013, 2014. But I want to remind Adel Duale that he was voted in by 3,000 people. I was voted in by 312,000 people. Between Cleophas Malala and Adel Duale, who is a member of county assembly. Mr. Speaker, it is sad that Adel Duale...
Order, senators. Proceed. You have 1 more minute, Senator Malala, to wind up your contribution.
Mr. Speaker.
What is it, Senator Yusuf Haji?
Mr. Speaker, sir, is the honorable senator in order to attack? It's not tribal. Keep quiet.
Order, Senator Haji. Order, Senator Rose Nyamunga. Both of you are out of order.
Thank you.
Senator Rose Nyamunga, you're out of order. Similarly, Senator Haji, you're out of order. What is out of order, Senator
I
Haji?
understand. I understand.
Please, you can raise your point of order, but don't shout across the aisle to Senator Nyamunga.
Obliged, Mr. Speaker. She provoked me, so I'm not a tribal leader at all. Mr. Speaker, is he really in order to attack another member of this parliament who is not here to defend himself? Is he in order?
Order. Senator Malala, I had hinted to you that ordinarily Standing Order 88 does not allow a member of this House, 90. Thank you, Senator Hanidi, although you did it irregularly. You should have, you should, Standing Order 90, paragraph 4 is clear. You do not question proceedings before another House. That is exactly what you did by mentioning who spoke, where, the content of their speech. And you know, Senator Malala, you can say what you want to say, but differently, and achieve the same results. So I would rather this matter lies there. That matter lies there, and I'll give you a maximum of 2 minutes to summarize your
Mr. Speaker, as that matter is being concluded, I want to warn Adel Duale, Mr. Speaker, that he shall not use his privilege as a leader of majority in the National Assembly to start abusing members of the Senate. He said that members of this Senate are old people, retired people. Shame on him. Shame on Adel Duale. And I want to warn him, I will not tolerate this. I am also a leader of minority. In my capacity, I can answer him, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I think the Holy Spirit...
Stick. Order, Senator. Order, Senator. Senator Malala. Senator Malala, stick to the issue of the International Youth Day. And I also direct you to Standing Order 88 now on irrelevancies.
Thank you,
so
Mr. Speaker.
Please stick to the issue of International Youth Day, and you have 1.5 minutes to conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we approach the International Youth Day, I would like to encourage leaders to respect youthful leaders. Let us not be intimidated just because we are newcomers in this house. I want to ask those leaders who keep on abusing young leaders that their time has come. We have emerged as young leaders, and we are going to deal with them perpendicularly and thoroughly. Let it be a warning to Adel Duale that I will not tolerate him again, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Very well. Very well. Order, senators. Order. Order, senators. Order, Senator Kabaka, Senator Mutula Jr. This is not the place for greetings and hugs. Order. Order. We have 2 more statements, and I'll be very strict on time. We have 2 more statements. Senator. Be as brief as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance to raise this statement. Pursuant to Standing Order 46-2A, I rise to issue a statement on the death of 11 rhinos that were translocated from Lake Nakuru and Nairobi National Park to Safo East National Park. Mr. Speaker, sir, as you may be aware, black rhinos are the most endangered wild animals in Kenya today. According to statistics, there are only about 700 black rhinos in the country, and the number keeps on decreasing day by day. Mr. Speaker, the question that begs answers is, did the government, through its agency, the Kenya Wildlife Service, KWS, in resolving to translocate the 11 black rhinos from Nairobi and Lake Nakuru National Park to Safo East National Park, properly plan and first think through the process of translocation in order to cushion the animal against dangers? Mr. Speaker, sir, from the reports in the public domain, it appears this was not a properly planned exercise. Hence, it failed miserably and resulted in the death of the animals. Since the death of the animals, many theories have been adduced to try and explain the cause of the death. Some experts claim that the relocation, which covers the entire process from planning, transfer, release, monitoring, and post-release management of the animals, was not carefully executed. Other claims that lack of careful analysis of environmental and ecological factors is to be blamed, while others claim that the type of species of the rhinos was not adaptable to the new
Order,
habitat.
senators. Order, senators. Proceed, Senator.
Thank you for protecting me. Mr. Speaker, sir, the government has not been forthright on the causes of the death and measures that are being undertaken to avert future deaths. The Cabinet Secretary for Tourism has not been heard, seen blaming the Cabinet Secretary for Tourism have been heard and seen blaming the Kenya Wildlife Service and its board for their death. Honorable Speaker, it's very sad that such a big number of these much endangered species of animals are dead and nothing is coming forth from the government in form of explanation except a blame game on who is responsible for the death. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is need for a proper inquiry to establish the factors that led to the death of the animals. The inquiry should extend to the KWS to establish why, in addition to the death of the animals, there are many other issues including human wildlife compensation that still remain unresolved. The inquiry should also look into the process that led to the need to relocate the animals. Report on research findings of the new habitat should be availed and the translocation process, and whether the process, including that of monitoring after relocation, was done in accordance with the recommended procedures. Mr. Speaker, sir, KWS is defiled by many wolves, which could have been part of the cause of this rhino fiscal. I would appeal to you, Mr. Speaker, to direct the relevant Senate committee to look into the state of affairs at KWS, including how service is being managed, because there are reports of demotivated staff due to low salaries and poor working conditions, which might have contributed to this rhino saga. There is also need to ascertain whether there are policies on moving animals from one sanctuary to another, and if so, whether the relevant policies were applied in the current rhino issue. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, sir, since the current Cabinet Secretary came into office a couple of years ago, there has been no improvement in the service delivery in KWS, which begs the question about his contribution to the improvement of service delivery. It's not, for instance, open knowledge that so many cases of compensation for loss of human life, livestock, crops, and properties and other losses arising from human-wildlife conflict have been pending for too long, Mr. Speaker, some dating to 2016 up to date. One wonders why the Cabinet Secretary has not taken action to ensure compensation, what the victims are supposed to do, and when the backlog will be cleared. Mr. Speaker, sir, I therefore wish to bring this matter to the attention of Senate and specifically the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources. I request that the committee carries out an inquiry with a view to establish the causes of the death of rhinos and the matter of delay in compensation to victims of human-wildlife conflicts all of our counties, after which appropriate recommendation should be brought to this House. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, senators. Senator, with or without the direction of the chair, nothing prevents you from sharing your statement with the relevant committee. And nothing also prevents the committee from moving suo motu. Nothing. So we want to make it clear that it is not always the case that you ask the chair to direct a committee to do its work. Order, senators. Honorable senators, I have a communication on visiting staff from the County Assembly of Uasin Gishu County. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon of visiting staff from the County Assembly of Uasin Gishu. I request each member of the delegation to stand when called out so that they may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. They are Mr. Aaron Sitienei from the Legislative Department, Ms. Zedi Tanui from the Legislative Department, Ms. Kigen Gloria from Legislative Department, and Ms. Rose Jaruto from the same department. In our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. Other senators, we are not doing so well. We have overshot our time on statements. The statement by Senator Musuruve will be deferred to tomorrow. On the statement which has already been issued, I will only allow Senator Sakaja, make it short, not more than 3 minutes. I'll order Senator Sakaja, order Senator Sakaja. And thereafter, I will allow an equal amount of time to Senator Wetangula because he had a similar statement that arrived seconds after this request by Senator. So I will allow him also to have an input and then we'll close that order. Senator Sakaja.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Speaker. I want to thank Senator Mary Senator for bringing this matter to the attention of the Senate. Indeed, it is disheartening to learn what happened to rhinos while being transported. Mr. Speaker, we only have 700 black rhinos in our country. The loss of 10 is unfortunate, and somebody must be held to account. There must be responsibility for this. Mr. Speaker, as the committee looks into this issue, I would just like, Mr. Speaker, to advise the Cabinet Secretary in charge to be a bit more conscientious and a bit more sensitive with the remarks and actions that he makes, Mr. Speaker. He is reported to having told all of those who've been asking about this to take a trip to a location that none of us can take ourselves, Mr. Speaker. And some people said that he meant to go to Hell's Gate, Tembea, Kenya. Mr. Speaker, this is the same cabinet secretary we have a lot of respect for. But just previously, Mr. Speaker, he arbitrarily cancelled sponsorship for the Kenya Rugby Sevens team. Arbitrarily and unilaterally, because of failing to display the brand Kenya on their t-shirts. And we have to tell him, Mr. Speaker, that brand Kenya is not a logo. The rugby team itself is brand Kenya. And so cancelling sponsorship of 20 million, Mr. Speaker, was out of turn, and he later came again to apologize, Mr. Speaker. We'd ask him to be a bit more careful so that he doesn't have to keep coming back to apologize for actions that he makes in such outbursts, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, finally, we need to preserve these animals because indeed they are the heritage that we're leaving for our children and for the young people. And this is coming at a timely time when Senator Chebeni has given us a statement on International Youth Day that is coming. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank her for that, and I want to ask senators, because I don't think it was very clear. Next Friday, then the 10th of August, we are having young people from across the country, and we would like to ask senators to at least nominate 2, and to even sponsor them to come, to go through the procedures of Parliament. There will be a session and a debate in the chamber of the National Assembly, where they will go through a debate on the theme of this year, which is safe spaces for young people. They will then go into committees at 11:30, and have to bring a report in the afternoon for debate and adoption, so that they can understand how the Senate operates, how the National Assembly operates, how Parliament works, Mr. Speaker. The young people of this country are the trustees of the posterity of this country. And unless we make them front and center of all our policy discourse and what we do in this House, then we'll be legislating in vain. Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate that Senator Malala, my good friend, had to respond to the infantile and juvenile outbursts from the other House, Mr. Speaker. It is infradig for any member of the Senate to go to the level of the National Assembly. Whenever they come up with such statements, if they insult us, Mr. Speaker, let us not play the same game as they are playing in the National Assembly. This is a House that Kenyans look up to for decorum, a House that is respected, and Mr. Speaker, I can say this with authority as having been a member of that other House and now in this House. It is not an insult to be called an MCA. MCAs are very respectable people. They are part of our governance structure. Mr. Speaker, members of county assembly are the guardians of devolution in the counties, and they must be respected. So if I'm to be called an MCA, I'll be grateful. Even if the member who's calling you got 3,000 votes, some of us got close to 1 million votes. But that does not make us better leaders than others who are in this House or in the other House. So I will urge my colleague, the leader of minority, the deputy leader of minority, to take some of these comments in stride, to let it roll off, to take the dirt off his shoulders, and to walk with confidence. He is not less of a senator because of infantile outbursts by the National Assembly. Thank you.
Order, senators. Senator Wetangula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had sought an opportunity to talk about our rhinos, and I thank Senator for having walked ahead of me to your office to get the opportunity. I support fully what she said. But I want to add, Mr. Speaker, that the committee that may look at this must establish the following facts. Why were rhinos being removed from Lake Nakuru, where there's more vegetation, and Nairobi National Park, where there's more vegetation, to be taken to Savo East, which is Asal? The second point, Mr. Speaker, is wherever these rhinos are, they're an attraction to tourists and therefore part of the economy of the counties where they are domiciled. Was public participation undertaken for the public in Nairobi and in Nakuru to allow their rhinos to be taken elsewhere and therefore lose revenue? But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, the facts are as follows. These rhinos were created, sedated, and moved to Savo East. Upon arrival, Mr. Speaker, they were maintained in the crates and fed for 5 days. I don't know whether that was right. After the 5 days, Mr. Speaker, the rhinos were released into a sanctuary that had not been properly analyzed scientifically to see whether they could survive or not. But more important, Mr. Speaker, boreholes that had been drilled in this sanctuary had their waters taken and tested and found to be 30% more alkaline than is required for any bovine consumption. So, Mr. Speaker, as the rhinos were released to go into the bush, they were going to actually drink poison because the water from the boreholes had 30% alkaline content over and above the required level for animals to consume. Mr. Speaker, when the rhinos died, we've now had a charade, like a theater of the absurd. The minister saying all manner of things, including, but not limited to, lying to Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, that the board of KWS is responsible when he knows that the board of KWS expired on 17th of April this year. The rhinos were relocated on 26th of June this year. So which board is he referring to? Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the minister then, in a fit of impatience and arrogance, moves quickly to sack employees of KWS. We know under the law, Mr. Speaker,
2 more minutes, Senator Wetangula.
we know under the law, Mr. Speaker, that the minister cannot sack employees of a board. So under what authority was he purporting to dismiss employees of the board? This excessive display of raw authority and power, Mr. Speaker, is what is destroying this country. And when Kenyans got angry with this minister, he says, go to hell. And then he starts thinking that Kenyans have got the brains the size of a pinhead and swings around and says, I didn't say go to hell, I say go to hell's gate. Mr. Speaker, what a shame. I'm sure every Kenyan, even the infantile ones, know the difference between go to hell and go to hell's gate. Mr. Speaker, in comparable jurisdictions, given that rhinos are endangered species world over, and we are lucky that we have just about 700 of them, this minister should not wait to be sacked, should have reconsidered his position. That's what happens in comparable jurisdictions. That you don't get yourself with your hand on the till and you brush up and say it wasn't me, when everybody can tell, Mr. Speaker. So this committee, Mr. Speaker, must go deep into this. Why is this reckless behavior against a resource that attracts tourists to this country, brings resources, and sustains our economy, can be handled in such a callous, reckless manner, and then you get an even more reckless response from a person who is supposed to be responsible? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Wetangula. Other senators, I have 2 communications to make. And the first one is on visiting students and teachers from Matunda Primary School, Murang'a County. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting students and teachers from Matunda Primary School, Murang'a County. In our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. The second communication, honorable senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting students and teachers from Gatanga Primary School, Murang'a County. In our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament. I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. Order, Senators. Next order.
Order number 8, motion, report of the Select Committee on the Solai Dam tragedy.
Chairperson, Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move, with your permission, that in an amended form, under Standing Order 51, that this House adopts and not notes the report of the Select Committee on the Solai Dam laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 26 July 2018. Mr. Speaker, I am waiting for your leave to proceed.
Order, Senator Mutula.
Yes, I requested.
Have you moved the motion?
Yes. I requested for your leave to move the motion in an amended form instead of the word note.
Proceed.
I proceed. Yes.
Proceed,
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the Select Committee on the Solai Dam laid on the table of the House Thursday, 26th of July, 2018. Mr. Speaker, may I begin first by mentioning...
What is it, Senator Moy?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to seek your guidance and ruling. The subject matter is actively in court, Mr. Speaker. And under our standing orders, number 92, and basically says no senator shall refer to any particular matter which is sub judice, in which by the operation of any written law is secret, and continues, a matter shall be considered to be sub judice when it refers to active criminal or civil proceedings, and the discussion of such matters likely to prejudice its fair determination. Mr. Speaker, the characters who are in this report have been charged in a criminal court. They're facing over 24 counts. Some of them are facing counts, manslaughter murder charges, which will constitute, if they're found guilty, life sentences, if not death. Mr. Speaker, in light of the above and the doctrine of the presumption of innocence is anchored in Article 51 of the Constitution. And Article 51 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, is what gave birth to this Article 92. I just want to seek your guidance and your rulings that can we really proceed with this matter in light that it is sub judice and in court. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What is it, Senator Olekina?
Mr. Speaker, as you prepare to give your ruling on this matter, this is a matter of national interest. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the characters who my good friend Senator Gideon Moi referred to appeared before the committee that I sit on, and this matter was raised by the lawyer, and
Senator
eventually...
Olekina, I would rather you use the word the persons.
The persons.
As opposed to characters.
Mr. Speaker,
characters
sir,
is dramatic, it's more of a drama or something.
Thank you, I'd be guided by you. But Mr. Speaker, sir, the reason why I refer to them as characters, I was taking cue from my good brother, Senator Gideon Moi, who actually referred to them as characters because of all the drama that is in this matter, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a matter of public interest. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Hansard will bear me witness that this House began deliberating on this matter of the Solai people for them to be able to get justice way before the DPP even initiated the proceedings that he did. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think when we are looking at issues, we really have to think about everything that we are doing in this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, currently I sit in CPIC and we are considering matters to do with Ruaraka. That issue has not been brought here and suggested that it's sub judice. The matters that we are dealing with on this matter of Ruaraka touches on a broad issues, some bordering on legislations, some bordering on the authorities of NEMA, NCA, the Ministry of Water, different ministries, Mr. Speaker, sir. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, this is not a matter which is only focused on the criminality. There are laws that guide on how this issue should be.
So, what is out of order?
So, Mr. Speaker, sir, as you make your ruling on this matter, I want you to consider the public interest
You are
in this matter.
assisting me to make a decision.
I am, as a person who was in the committee, Mr. Speaker, sir, these are issues that we shared. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, put in mind the life of those poor people in Somalia.
Order, Senator. Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. Yes, you respond to that point of order raised by Senator Moi.
Thank you, Speaker. When I was younger, I used to represent Senator Gideon Moi. During that time, he was in good stead with the law.
Order, Senator Junior. Are you trying to say that Senator for Baringo County
No, I'm simply saying that
is not acting and behaving in accordance with the law?
No, for this particular point, I think that he's misadvised legally. And I wanted to say that when I used to advise him, he would not have raised this point, and I'm going to elaborate. Mr. Speaker, in a matter like this, Senator Gideon Moi should have, in fact, disclosed his interest. What is Senator Gideon Moi's interest? Is he a business partner of Mr. Patel? Is he a business partner of any of the accused?
Yes, Senator Moi.
But I'm responding.
Is responding, but what is it, Senator Gideon Moi? Order, Senator Hadiri. I have not asked you to help the chair to run the House.
Mr. Speaker, this is bordering on imputing improper motive on a colleague. And you know, in order to do that, you need to bring a substantial motion to the House.
Order, Senator. If I heard Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., he just needed you to clarify whether you have any interest.
Yes.
Because the standing orders also provide that any interest must be disclosed. Any interest must be disclosed. Do you have any interest? That is the question.
I do not have any interest whatsoever, real or imagined.
That's good enough. Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr.
That makes my life easy. So Senator Gideon Moi is raising a point of order for the sake of it. Because if Senator Gideon Moi bothered to read the standing orders all the way to standing order number 4, a senator alleging a matter is sub judice shall provide evidence to show that paragraph 2 and paragraph 3 are applicable. So first and foremost, the sub judice objection is premature because he has not laid a basis. So I'm responding to something that has no basis. That's number one. Number two, the accused person, the person who spent 3 days in Naivasha was here, seated here. He never brought the question of sub judice, and that is why I asked him to declare his interest. What is his interest? But, Mr. Speaker, I know what the problem is with my colleague. He was away for too long because, Mr. Speaker, this motion was moved before the charge was preferred against these persons. My colleague Senator Olekina said that we actually went far much wider because this Senate approved a motion with 4 things.
Let me get this clear, Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. Is your case that this matter is not sub judice?
It is not sub judice. In fact, we went even
It's
further.
not sub judice.
It's not. To the extent that we warned ourselves as a committee in the report. Senator Gideon Omoy should have read the caveat. We put a caveat in this report that we never requested for a statement from any of the witnesses. We never requested a statement from the DPP. When he showed up here, we chased everybody. We sat with him in camera. Why? Because we were protecting the fair rights of the accused persons. The person who should come and say the discussion and the report I have read.
Do you know the witnesses?
Sorry?
You know the witnesses?
No, that's what I'm saying. We never requested for a statement of any of the witnesses, so we don't know who the witnesses are. We never requested for the evidence from any person. When Mr. Perry Mansuk sat here, he never bothered to give us any statement of any witness and to say the mandate we were given, A to D, and the letters that we gave him was sub judice. Mr. Speaker, lastly, what Senator Moy doesn't know is that the principle of sub judice vis-a-vis parliamentary proceedings is weighed against what is called public interest. Do we have a public interest on the Solai Dam tragedy vis-a-vis the rights of one person or 2 people? Mr. Speaker, I beg that you rule that in a matter of public interest, notwithstanding that the fact that Senator Gideon Moy has not produced any evidence before you complying with the standing order, first dismiss that sub judice argument, number 1. You don't need a direction, Mr. Speaker, and being a teacher of law, this should be very easy for you. But even worse, the matter of public interest in the Solai Dam tragedy, which is actually being investigated by both houses, it is in the interest of the Senate to get into the bottom of this matter as quickly as possible, even before the trial of the accused person starts. We might help them, and we might help this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, Senator Mutula Kilonzo. You have argued that you can resume your seat, Mutula Kilonzo Jr. You've argued that this matter is not sub judice, although you have not provided me with authority, because Senator Moy read out 92.5. Secondly, Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., you have pointed to the public interest involved, which that one is obvious. It requires, because the facts in themselves are such that the matter is of public interest because of the number of people who died and were affected by this tragedy. And on that point, the point of public interest, I will require to listen to a few more interventions on that point of sub judice so that I can make a considered ruling. So, I'll start with Senator Sakaja.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just to add on to what Senator Mutula said, as you consider the question raised by Senator Moy. Mr. Speaker, Standing Order number 92 has 5 parts. Number 1 says that we shall not refer to a matter that is active or under judicial consideration. But Mr. Speaker, more importantly, Standing Order number 2 is really where the focus should be as you consider this. It says that a matter shall be considered to be sub judice when it refers to active criminal or civil proceedings and the discussion of such matter is likely to prejudice its fair determination. Mr. Speaker, even if and when Senator Gideon Moy complies with the Standing Order number 92.4 by bringing evidence of the active criminal proceedings, Mr. Speaker, he is supposed to convince you and to convince the House that any discussion, despite the fact that the proceeding might be active, that any such discussion is likely to prejudice the fair determination of this matter. Mr. Speaker, as the chair has said, Mr. Mansuk himself and the lawyer were before this committee. We raised this issue and they agreed, yes, we will not go into the matters that are actively before the court, but we'll discuss matters even of policy, matters of omission and commission that occurred in Solai, and that was left aside. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I do not want to, for it to be lost, the question that Senator Mutula has asked on Standing Order number 93, on declaration of interest. Mr. Speaker, it is interesting that just a few minutes ago, Senator Uta has called Senator Moi a stranger because he has not seen him. It is interesting that for the first time when he appears, he goes straight to stop discussion of such a matter.
Senator Moi is a member of this House.
He's a member of this, and he's rightfully in this House, Mr. Speaker.
You know the meaning of the word stranger?
Mr. Speaker,
in the context of standing orders.
I was referring to what Senator Uta said. I am not calling him a stranger. I know very well that Senator Moi was validly elected by the people of Baringo. But Mr. Speaker, when Standing Order 93 says that a senator who wishes to speak on any matter in which the senator has a pecuniary or proprietary interest shall first declare the interest, Mr. Speaker, we want it to be clearly on the record from Senator Gideon Moi that Mr. Mansuk or his lawyers are not known to him. He has not had any discussions with him.
I thought Senator
and that he has no
Moi
interest. Has
already said, unless your claim is that he does have an interest.
Mr. Speaker, I'm saying that beyond just saying
in which
he has no
case
interest,
I'll ask you to
casually
substantiate.
Instead, on top of just saying casually that he has no interest, Mr. Speaker, it will be good for the record and the integrity of this House for him to tell this House that he has not had any discussion with the lawyer or Mr. Mansuk or anybody related to this case.
Senator Sakaja, whoever alleges must prove. Whoever alleges must prove.
Mr. Speaker, is the one who has alleged.
So the allegation is that the senator could be having an interest.
Mr. Speaker,
so unless you have proof, that is a route you do not want to
Mr.
take.
Speaker, you have not heard me clearly. I have not alleged. I have asked him to satisfy the House.
Which he has.
Not that he has no interest. To satisfy the House that he has not been in any communication or contact with Mr. Mansuk or his lawyers.
Order, Senator.
If, Mr. Speaker, if he has not, then he will not hesitate to give this House that assurance.
Order,
if
Senator.
Indeed he has not been in communication with Mr. Mansuk on this matter. And
order.
He will
Order, Senator Sakaja. Resume your seat. Senator Wetangula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also noted with tremendous interest the distinguished Senator for Baringo raising the point, but he has every right to do so. Mr. Speaker, it is not enough to stand up in the chamber and say this matter is sub judice. In fact, it's not sub judice, it's pronounced sub judice. Mr. Speaker, it's not enough to stand up and tell the House that the matter is sub judice. You must demonstrate to this House what is the case number, who is the accused, what is the charge, how many witnesses are likely to be called, how many statements have been recorded, when is the hearing date, which court, which judge. All these, Mr. Speaker, are prerequisites for establishing that a matter is sub judice. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, there is a ruling, and our clerks here can indulge us by getting it to you, that was delivered by the former Speaker of the National Assembly, Kenneth Marende, exhaustively on the matter of sub judice. It's not enough even to know that there's a court case going on, but you must establish that the proceedings of this House are likely to affect, and you must show the extent of the affecting of that case, how is the debate here going to affect? If you look, Mr. Speaker, we can even take judicial notice that there's a court case out of Solai Dam. But what case do we have? It's a homicide. It's a homicide. The proceedings in this House, Mr. Speaker, are not inquiring into a homicide. We are inquiring into matters of recklessness, criminal negligence, and greed that has brought anguish to this nation. And Mr. Speaker, you as the chair, as Lord Denning would say, shall forever sit there with the eye of a hawk in terms of vigilance. Anybody who veers off the beaten track, you have a duty to stop us. That's why you chair these proceedings. That if any senator embarks on a misadventure that goes off the track on what is before us, then you rule them out of order. Mr. Speaker, lastly, public interest. It will go down very badly for this House to be portrayed out there that through very whimsical reasons, we are stifling debate on a matter that not just Kenyans, but Kenyans of the lowest level of our society, who are caught in their bedrooms and swept off like you sweep animals lying in a lager to death. And 48 of them. Mr. Speaker, if it was in Robespierre's France in 1789, we would be talking about something different. But we are in Kenya in 2018. I urge you, sir, that you rule Senator Gideon Moi out of order to the extent that he has not provided any material, he has not satisfied the standing order that he quoted, and above all, Mr. Speaker, he's simply trying to derail debate. He's simply trying to postpone debate. And in my community we say, when a cow has carried a calf for 9 months and the gestation period is over, even if you call muscle men to hold it back, it must come out.
Order, Senator. Senator Maura.
Mr. Speaker, I think this matter has been very well canvassed. And Mr. Speaker, it is very true that it is not enough to just quote a standing order. This is a matter of public interest. And even looking at the kind of evidence that is before us in terms of the documents so tabled, it is only in the interest of this House that we be able to be given a chance to debate this report. Mr. Speaker, this House is not in the business of determining court cases. This House is not even in the business of providing evidence to the courts of law. Our work is to look at the best interest of the common wananchi. And Mr. Speaker, I also would want to join my colleagues in saying that really Senator Gideon Moi is a distinguished senator of this republic and a distinguished legislator. I do not want to imagine that if this tragedy had happened in Baringo County, he would have come to derail the debate of this august House. I think the people who lost their lives and property, who are innocent, deserve to know the true findings of this august House. And we have had members of this Senate who have refused to be persuaded, have refused to be dissuaded in order to proceed with the inquiry concerning Solai Dam. And in that regard, Mr. Speaker, this report is not a product of any form of political divide. It is a product of bipartisanship. So we need to accord the committee to report to us its finding. This committee is a creature of this very august house, and we must not use the law as a technicality to subvert the voices of the people, the representation of the people, the oversight of the people that we so have been given the mandate to speak on behalf of this house. Mr. Speaker, in that regard, I would seek your judgment and your ruling that you dismiss the intervention of Senator Gideon Moi with the respect and advice it deserves. Thank you.
Senator Omogeni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, senators. Order, senators.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to add my voice to this debate. First, Mr. Speaker, I want this House to note that if at all there was any breach of the sub judice rule, which I doubt there was, this House has already had proceedings and had debate on this issue, Mr. Speaker. Because, Mr. Speaker, the proceedings that took place at the committee stage under our standing rules, those were proceedings of this House. So, Mr. Speaker, we have already had a discussion on the Solai issue. Second, Mr. Speaker.
Is your argument, Senator Omogeni, so that I get you clearly? Are you saying if you have started proceedings,
Mr.
it doesn't matter whether rightly or not, we should continue? Is that the argument?
The point I need to make, Mr. Speaker, is that already we did task this committee to look into this matter. They have prepared a report which is before the House. But I wanted to tie that, Mr. Speaker, to the Constitution that we passed in 2010, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under Article 33 of the Constitution, Kenyans have freedom of expression, which includes freedom to seek, receive, and impart information or ideas, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the only limitation to that right in Article 33 is what is found in Article 24 of our Constitution. And Mr. Speaker, the only way you can allow limitation of that constitutional right is a situation that can be justifiable in an open and democratic society. Mr. Speaker, in the situation at hand, Mr. Speaker, where lives were lost, Mr. Speaker, the people of this country have a right to know what conclusions the committee that was appointed by this House will arrived at, and what decision will make as a House, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the sub judice rule has a history. And the history of sub judice rule, Mr. Speaker, as lawyers we know, it has a history from the common law tradition, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the rule was introduced to ensure that the jury is not influenced by debates that could take place outside the jury itself, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, in this country, we know that the cases that are pending before court will be determined by judicial officers who will arrive at their decisions based on the law and not on what will take place before this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the magistrate or judges who will consider these cases will not be influenced by the debate that will take place before this House, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the case law that we have, Mr. Speaker, and there was a High Court decision in the case of Okia Umtata versus the Attorney General, Mr. Speaker. The guiding principle, Mr. Speaker, is that the sub judice rule cannot be applied in a blanket manner or in a very general manner, Mr. Speaker. What the Senator for Baringo ought to have done, Mr. Speaker, is to point out why he thinks that this debate will cause prejudice to the suspects who are having their cases before court, Mr. Speaker. It's not enough, Mr. Speaker, to rise up and say that if the debate was to proceed, then the sub judice rule will be breached. There should be specificity which will enable you as chair, Mr. Speaker, to make a decision as to whether the debate that will take place before this House will in any way influence the judicial officers who will finally make determinations on the cases before court. Mr. Speaker, looking at the report that has been tendered before the House, Mr. Speaker, the report does not in any direct way relate to the merits or non-merits of the cases that are pending before court. I urge you, Mr. Speaker, to disallow the attempt by my good friend Senator for Baringo of attempting to derail this House from debating this matter, which I emphasize is of great general public importance. I urge you to disallow, Mr. Speaker, that objection.
All right, a few more. Senator Cheruyot. Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, I'll be extremely careful because earlier on when I came into the chamber, I greeted Senator Moi with a lot of happiness and he ruled me out of order. The reason I greeted him with a lot of happiness is that I have learned from experience that when you see Senator Moi in the Senate, there is a matter that is extremely important to him. And therefore I knew that this afternoon there must be a matter. It's only that I didn't know what. Mr. Speaker, standing order. One of the things that we do in this House, Mr. Speaker, is review of our standing orders to align it to issues that keep on arising as we do our duties as senators. This is a corner that we've been, Mr. Speaker, where we are debating issues and somebody raises the point as the one that is being raised by our colleague this afternoon. And it is in light of that that our standing order number 925, Mr. Speaker, took us to add that notwithstanding reference to the other standing, to this standing order number 92, the Speaker may allow reference to any matter that is before Senate or a committee. This is a curve that we have already been, because before we got to the point of drafting the report, there was a motion that was presented before the Speaker. I am sure he was aware of the issues that were before DCI and DPP, but he satisfied himself as a honorable Speaker of this House that it was important that we as the representatives of the people look into this matter. And therefore, you cannot at this particular point declare this process to be sub judice. Sub judice, as Senator Moses Wetangula has reminded us this afternoon. I'm trying, Mr. Speaker, you know I'm not a lawyer, so when Senator Wetangula speaks, I do not want to lose my point. The point I'm making, Mr. Speaker, is you cannot at this point declare this matter to be at that point, yet the point of declaration was at its inception stage. This matter has traveled the parliamentary journey from the thought of the mind of a senator who brought the motion up to the decision of a speaker. And therefore, in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, what Senator Gideon Moi is doing is akin to a man trying to close.
Order, Senator, is your argument that if sub judice argument is not raised at the inception, it
shouldn't occur.
It should not occur at any stage.
At any particular stage. After that.
What's your authority for that?
What? Please come again, Mr. Speaker.
What
I didn't
is
get
your
it.
authority
Oh,
for
what
that?
is my authority on that?
Yes.
Past practice in this House, Mr. Speaker. I remember on many afternoons that we have had similar issues. The former occupant of that seat, Mr. Speaker, the Right Honorable Lekwe Thuro, made similar rulings before this House and advised that once that determination has been made, you cannot, in the middle of the process, subject it to another point of debate.
Which ruling is that in particular? In what matter?
In which, the matters that were before us?
Yeah, because
I remember on a particular occasion on a particular occasion, we were debating a report of the PAC committee, and one of the governors had gone to court and protested that his issues shouldn't be considered in this house, Mr. Speaker. And Senator, the Right Honorable Speaker, made that ruling that afternoon, that the point of determining whether we should have debated the conduct of that governor or not had been passed. I'm a good student of history, Mr. Speaker, and therefore...
Okay.
Therefore, in concluding, the point that I was making is that while Senator Moi may be having a point, the horse has already bolted, and therefore he cannot close the door to the stable at this point. And as a revered jockey, he of all people should know that it is impossible to do that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. I will listen to maybe a maximum of 4 other interventions, and then we close it. The first one is Senator Kabaka of Machakos County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'm so happy, and I hope Mr. Mo is listening.
Order, Senator. Just resume your seat for a minute.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Order, Senator Sakaja. Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. Order, Senators, I have 2 communications to make. Order, Senator Maina. Order, Senator Maina Kirinyaga. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting students and teachers from Marula Primary School, Nakuru County, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament. I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. Similarly, Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon of visiting students and teachers from Jamaa Primary School, Kisumu County. On the usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. Senator Kabaka, quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity also to give my contribution on the jurisprudence on these very broad, disturbing principles of law. Mr. Speaker, sir, I need to state that on the onset, the provision of the article cited by Honorable Distinguished Senator Umbaringo, Article 51 is misplaced. That is wrong. It ought to have quoted Article 50. That is number 1. Number 2, under the principle of separation of powers, there is nothing on earth, even under the sun, which prevents distinctively Parliament debating on the issue, so long as it does not in any way prejudice on an individual's right. What does this say? Mr. Speaker, sir, I do know that when it comes to procurement of evidence pursuant to the Evidence Act, Cap 8, laws of Kenya, there are provisions to the effect that documents of records like answers, they are not of necessity. They do not bind the courts of law. I do appreciate in certain area in criminal law where the subject calls for court to determine on retracted or illegal obtained evidence. There's an area where law intending say that even though the courts are not bound by the answered reports in their determination of the findings, in their judgment, he himself at certain times would go and peruse the answered law reports to look at the intention of the Parliament. And that's why I'm saying it would be very dangerous if we are going to apply the rules of sub judice with that regard, because matters are pending in court. These are criminal homicide in nature. What if a judge, a crazy judge, a due respect, behaves like Lord Tenning in that regard and comes and sees the outcome of the answered report, which was killed at the preliminary level? Mr. Speaker, sir, before I sit, I urge your chair to dismiss in limine the interruption given by distinguished Senator Baringo. And more so, if you look at the public good, the interpretation of the Constitution, the provision is giving Article 50, cannot be applied annually. The courts are caught upon when it comes to interpretation of the Constitution, or even statute, more so the Constitution, indeed, to interpret it purposively in favor of the public as opposed to individual private good or private right. I sit and support that the point raised by the distinguished Senator of Baringo be dismissed and be allowed to proceed with this debate and the presentation of the report by Motula Jr. Thank you.
Very well. Two other speakers. Senator Chergai.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. From the onset, thank you. I would want to say the lives that were lost in Solai, property, are very sacred and would not like Kenyans to lose at any given point, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, it is very important under Article 34-35, Kenyans under the Constitution have right to information and the media freedom. So if these issues, I've heard my colleagues have said the rule of sub judice or that it should be stopped at some point, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is very unfortunate, and I would want to, with all due respect to Senator Gideon Moi, that I think and I believe the lives of Kenyans that were lost, the property that were lost, they should be a legal redress, which is ongoing. We should allow the committee that is chaired by one of my legal committee members, the Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., and they have done good work so far. And Kenyans have access and they have been able to even visit the place. So anybody who imagines or contemplates, either in reality or in any other form, to stop the process that the parliament has started is not only a threat to the peace, security, and the lives of Kenyans, but it's a threat to the independence of this House, Mr. Speaker, sir. This House enjoys quasi-judicial abilities, and therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, no one should be allowed at any given time to try and even interfere with the process that this committee, the Hado Committee on Solai Dam, that wants to give justice to Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, sir. Justice will only be gotten in this House and even in courts of law. We should respect that, Mr. Speaker, sir. All of us are representative of the people. Let us divorce politics in this issue. I know it looks politically appetizing, and we should not, as of this House, be protectors of cartels and corruption, Mr. Speaker, sir. Those people who ensured, either through negligence, that our people lost lives and property, they must pay the heavier price, Mr. Speaker, sir. So if anybody has befriended the cartels or they want to protect somebody's name, they should be very careful, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Cheragai. Yes. Proceed. Wind up.
They should.
What is it, Senator Halake?
I rise to ask if it's in order for senator after senator to impute ill motive when the question that was asked was just for your guidance with regards to the reference to the sub judice. Because as one of the people that is always asking about different things, having read these things, I'm wondering then, does it mean that we should never ask where there's no clarity for ourselves, perhaps by virtue of having been away or whatever virtue, that if you ask, it's definitely because you're not standing with the public
Senator
interest.
Abshiro,
is that in order?
Senator Abshiro.
Yes.
Actually, you and Senator Pareno will make the closing. I'll give you a chance to close. the issue you are raising, I have already dealt with it. I have called the senator to order. Okay? So please conclude. Senators, we have taken a bit of time on this issue because we need to make a very considered decision. And therefore, we needed the benefit of the collective wisdom of the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for protecting me.
I have not protected you, I have called you to order. I called you to order, actually. But I protected you from yourself.
I stand guided, Mr. Speaker, sir. Of course, I stand guided. And I wanted to say finally that we should be very careful. The decisions we make today, when we stand in the way of justice for Kenyans, will come heavily the price. And I want to advise my good friend, the senator of Baringo, Senator Gideon Moi, that he should be careful, that he should not become an impediment or a stumbling block to the justice, legal redress of Kenyans as we come, Mr. Speaker, sir. Because he should be careful. You never know what the future has. So if you continue building roadblocks on your way to the future, it will be very dangerous, Mr. Speaker. We advise him to stick to what is the best for all of us as leaders, because when the clarion, the trumpet, will be called at some point in life, and that call is called upon, you should not have so many sins, Mr. Speaker, sir. You can rise up to the occasion and stand with Kenyans for justice, peace, and unity. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Thank you, Senator Charagai. Senator Bishiro, quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I pressed the wrong button. I was actually just going to intervene with regards to the point of order, whereby the senators actually had imputed ill motive at every juncture to say that asking a provision within our standing order automatically means and is confirmed to mean that Senator Moi is not standing for public interest. That I don't think is the case, even though I'm not speaking for Senator Moi. What?
Order. Order. There is a chorus from one side of the House. That chorus is led by the Senator for Bungoma County.
And for
Can you proceed,
yes,
Senator Bishiro?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And for the information of the Senator for Bungoma County, if it's the right word, then even though I'm not a lawyer, I speak French, it's sub judice. So, I proceed.
Proceed, Senator Bishiro.
Mr. Speaker, I digress. But that said, I think this afternoon we've seen a lot of excitement in this House, thanks to Senator Moi. And
what is it, Senator Wetangula?
Mr. Speaker, a clear case of being clever by half. Mr. Speaker, is the distinguished senator in order to say that sub judice is French when it's in fact is Latin?
Latin, and the root of French is Latin, so I can say it without fear or favor. C'est juste sub judice. Je parle français très bien, merci.
You see, Senator Bishiro, the issue is not whether you can speak French. The issue, you have been challenged.
And the issue is that
whether sub judice is a Latin word or a French word, as you allege.
It is a Latin word, but the French word has roots in Latin, and both are supposed to be pronounced sub judice.
Order, Senator. Let me save you further agony.
Actually, I'm enjoying it, Mr. Speaker.
Resume your seat. Let me save you further agony. Sub judice is actually sub judice, and it is it's Latin. And the lawyers like Moses Wetangula and others will tell you that you pronounce Latin as it is written, and you write Latin as it is pronounced. So I would advise you abandon that direction and wind up your remarks about sub judice and its application to the Solai investigation matter that is before us. 2 more minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I was saying, I think that a few days ago, Mr. Speaker, you passed a message to inform the chairperson of my committee on the local content bill and to pass the message that he should be here to defend that bill. I did. And this is the reason. Just before I got into this house, I said, Senator Moi, your bill is here, and I was given a message. And again, while I don't speak for him for having come for Solai Dam, this was the reason I actually passed the message. Beside that point, Mr. Speaker, I think this house, as colleagues, if anybody asked a question with regards to any standing order, and which I do a lot, as you know, it is not necessarily because of ill motive or because of lack of support to the public. We all know Senator Moi a few days ago was there, and he has been supporting this process. So again, I'm asking, where is the goodwill for colleagues? Where then, is it that as newcomer, for instance, who is not very familiar with some of the issues within the standing order, that is intimidating? Because I find it very intimidating not to be able to ask without being judged so harshly as has been done this afternoon. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Finally, you can see so many requests, but time will not allow us to continue. Senator Pareno, quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to contribute to this very interesting aspect of our report. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, the word to note in our rules is that the word active proceedings. So I want to say that at the time that this Senate was seized of this matter, were there active proceedings? I want to say no. We started on this matter, the committee, National Security Committee, which I sit, visited the scene. National Security Committee came and reported a preliminary report to this House, made a statement. We had Senator Kihika making a statement on that aspect before anybody was ever brought before a court of law. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that actually the arrest and the proceedings that they now want to use as a card to stop us were initiated after this Senate spoke and called for arrests. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that it will not be just for us to call for arrest and prosecution while this matter was already seized in this House, for that calling of arrest to be used against the Senate by means of calling for us to invoke the sub judice rule. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that this Senate has expended a lot on this matter. An ad hoc committee was brought before this House. Members were approved before this House. Before proceedings started, members were approved, proceeded to expend their time, labor, resources to handle this Solai matter, to investigate this Solai matter. Mr. Speaker, look at the volume before us. So voluminous, so much work has gone into it, so much investigation has gone into it. Then you come and tell us sub judice after all the work has been done? Mr. Speaker, I say no. Mr. Speaker, I wish to report that members of this ad hoc committee have been threatened. They have received threats so that they don't discuss or bring this report before this House. And they have told us as much. They have received advances from people. Probably they might even be able to identify who they are, threatening them not to even append their signatures. Mr. Speaker, if you look at this report, only 5 members have signed out of a committee of 9. Shame on those.
Order, Senator, you should not anticipate the debate.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, that is, I wish to be corrected on that.
Okay.
But I want to say that they have reported that they have received threats. This sub judice rule that is being invoked now is just another threat. It's bringing a threat in the name of sub judice. And I ask, Mr. Speaker, that we commend this committee for coming out strongly, resisting the advances, resisting the threats, appending their signatures for the sake of the Solai people. Mr. Speaker, I submit and say that we walk high with our heads high as a Senate, as a committee.
Is your
that
submission that the point of order by Senator Moi should not be entertained?
Should be disregarded with the contempt that it deserves. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, senators. We have to bring this to a close. I can see my screen is full. But Senator Wambua has pleaded for 2 minutes. I hope there is a value addition. Yeah? Do not repeat what colleagues have said. So Senator Wambua, strictly 2 minutes, and we'll close it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also do hope that there will be value addition in this contribution. Mr. Speaker, the value addition is very simple and straightforward. We have spent well over 30 minutes, Mr. Speaker, canvassing the matter of sub judice. Even before the chairman of the committee begins to read the first paragraph of the report. The Speaker, if there was any doubt as to the amount of public interest in this matter, then the debate on the intervention by Senator Moi settles that matter. That this matter is a matter of serious, immense public interest that cannot be curtailed by a consideration on the law of sub judice. Mr. Speaker, I submit.
Is the matter sub judice?
Mr. Speaker, I submit the matter is not sub judice.
Why?
We should continue, Mr. Speaker.
Why is it not sub judice?
Mr. Speaker, because if you ask me, and I'm not a lawyer, the lawyers in the House have ventilated on this matter. But if you weigh the public interest against the argument of sub judice on this matter, Mr. Speaker, this matter has been canvassed, not in this House, in the public domain, Mr. Speaker. This matter has been debated. Witnesses have appeared before the committee of this Senate, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, my submission is that you allow the committee chairman to table the report and senators debate this matter objectively and without prejudice, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Thank you, senators. Senator Wambua, the report was tabled yesterday. So what is before us this afternoon is whether the chairperson can move the motion to adopt the report of the committee, and of course that will be followed by debate so that the adoption can take place. Now, I have deliberately allowed all those interventions so that we make an informed decision. This is not the first time issues of sub judice have been raised before this House. So I find nothing unusual from Senator Moi or any other senator raising issues of sub judice. I don't think it is trivial, and that is why our standing orders provide that standing order on the rule on sub judice. So I think that should be the starting point as we look at this matter. Number two, I have also listened to the discussion and the contribution and interventions by honorable senators trying to argue their understanding on this rule and its limitations and its application. Number three, the Speaker of this House previously has had to make a ruling, a detailed ruling on this matter. The Speaker of the National Assembly throughout various parliaments, various speakers have ruled on this matter. Therefore, this being a very weighty decision, because it touches on the independence of Parliament and how Parliament should exercise that independence in relation to the other branches of government. I therefore, in the circumstances, direct as follows. That one, that this motion be deferred to tomorrow 2:30 p.m. Two, that the matter or this motion be given high priority tomorrow at 2:30 p.m., in which case the order number 7, which is normally statements and which normally takes a bit of time, will be transacted after this motion has been debated. So it means within the first 5 minutes of tomorrow's sitting, this motion should be able to be transacted depending on the ruling of that speaker, which should precede any further debate on this motion. Therefore, in short, senators, tomorrow at 2:30, the Speaker will make a detailed ruling on the matter raised by Senator Gideon Moi. Depending on that ruling, a debate may ensue, depending on the finding, because I need a bit of time to reflect and balance all the authorities and look at history. We are also guided by precedents and previous decisions of Parliament. We can also break new ground, but we have to support that new ground with authority so that our decision can stand the test of time. What is it, Senator Kabaka?
Mr. Speaker, sir, before you finalize your ruling, I'm standing on the point of intervention with regards to the seriousness of the matter which you are ruling, and more so for the security of the committee members having heard their threats, and more so from the mover of this report, Honorable Mutula Jr., that he be given proper security before then.
Order.
Because this is not a laughing matter. It's a matter of life or death.
Order. Senator Maura.
Mr. Speaker, Martin Luther King Jr. said that all labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and should be pursued with painstaking excellence. Mr. Speaker, you have already ruled, and you have given yourself time to give a considered judgment on this matter. Is it really in order for Senator Kabaka to challenge your ruling, which is unparliamentary and unprocedural? Thank you.
Order. Senator Maura, I don't think Senator Kabaka has challenged my ruling. What I think Senator Kabaka was doing, with my permission, was to seek further clarification. However, Senator Kabaka, unless you're speaking for yourself, Senator Mutula Kilonzo is here. He has not indicated that he is under danger and requires specific directions. So let's not over-dramatize this matter. This matter has been out there in the public domain for a long time, and I think we are at the tail end of it. But should Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. or any other senator require the support of Parliament to exercise their duties, that opportunity is there, not necessarily on the floor of this House. That facility is there for all members who must feel safe and protected as they exercise their duties. Very well, so I direct that order number 8 be deferred tomorrow. It should be on tomorrow's order paper at the same position as order number 8. And as I already said, it will be transacted before the order number 7, which is statements. So ordered. Next order. Order, Senator, those who are retreating to do so in silence. Order, senators who are retreating to retreat in silence. Senator Pareno, approach the chair. Senator Nyamunga, approach the chair. Senator Nyamunga, approach the chair as well. Very well. We do not have, senators, we do not have the numbers to carry out the division in order number 9. I therefore direct that order number 9 be deferred. Very well. Senators, I also direct that the items appearing at order number 10, order number 11, and order number 12 be deferred to tomorrow. The movers and sponsors of those items are not around. And so we'll proceed from order number 13 downwards. So we will not sit in the committee of the whole. Next order.
Order number 13, the County Government's Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 13 of 2018, second reading.
Order number 13, Senator Cheruyot. But I think this one has been moved already. Senator Mary, Senator, the last time the debate was interrupted, you were on the floor and you had 13 minutes remaining. Would you wish to continue or you conclude the debate, what you had to say? So, Senator, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance to actually complete my debate on this bill. And from the onset, I want to congratulate Senator Aaron Cheriot for having thought about the human resource element in our county. I want to say that building the human capital is a very, very important aspect in our devolved units. When we want to do development in our counties, we must have a competent, effective, and capable staff and a human resource which can be able to perform. When we look at our counties today, many of our sectors needs a human resource that can sit down, plan, manage, and deliver effective services to our counties. And therefore, to have a public service board chair who is a professional, this will determine and this will go a long way in making sure that whoever they recruit as the staff of the counties are very competent. I agree that it is not only the chair that should be a human resource management professional, but also the whole public service board membership should equally be competent and should equally be qualified to be able to recruit members of or a staff of the county who can be able to deliver services at the right time in our counties. When we look around, Madam Speaker, in our counties today, in many of our sectors, many of our staff members or those people who have been recruited in our counties to work, many of them lack the capacity. And I think, Madam Chair, we should not only look at the public service board being competent, but we should also look at even offering in-service training or refreshment courses for our staff who we recruit in our counties, so that we have people who can deliver services, quality services, and timely services to our citizens. We also need a competent workforce that can be able to reason, come up with policies that affects different sectors in our county, so that we can be able to give good services to our people in our counties. Looking at the bill, I think it's equally important that we agree that whenever a process of recruitment is required in our counties, the public board must also adhere to merit when they are employing the staff. They should look into the qualifications of the people they are recruiting. They should also be able to look at the qualifications, the experiences, so that when we get the workforce in our counties, we get people who can be able to work and deliver services to the citizens of our counties at the right time. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I support this bill.
Senator Kilonzo Mutula Jr.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support the amendment. It's actually a very simple amendment, but speaks volumes on the question of ensuring that the public service, county public service chairperson is a person who is qualified in the human resource management profession. Madam Speaker, in all sectors, in the public and private, particularly the private sector, the people who recruit workers are experts in the human resource. Madam Speaker, I'm not surprised about the omission, because there are so many omissions in this act, and we have ended up panel beating the County Governments Act in so many respects, Madam Speaker, that in fact, sometimes I think we should audit the County Governments Act entirely. Recently, Madam Speaker, and that's why I'm saying so, 2 courts have ruled that there is no position of Deputy Speaker in the County Governments Act. Yet, Deputy Speakers have been sitting in the county assemblies for the last 6 years. The same way, Madam Speaker, that we have a Deputy Speaker here, you wonder, when the court was ruling that the Constitution and the County Governments Act does not envision a Deputy Speaker, was that person familiar with lawmaking? Who is supposed to chair the committee of the whole in the absence of a Deputy Speaker? Who is supposed to report to the plenary in the absence of a Deputy Speaker? Who is supposed to be a chairperson? Some of these things have called us, as Senate, to audit this bill and the County Governments Act. The senator of Nyeri is leaving. And they had a crisis in Nyeri when the governor died. And he's standing in front of me, contrary to the standing orders. The Supreme Court was called upon to fill in the gap created by the crisis in Nyeri and Nairobi. Nairobi has not appointed a governor in the timelines provided. Nyeri has appointed, and Nyeri has moved on. Although Senator of Nyeri was proposing that a senator should be given a role in the choosing of a governor in the case of Nyeri and Nairobi, which we do not agree with. The fact is that there's a lacuna in the County Governments Act, which lacuna he was trying to find, just like any good leader, a method of covering it. In the last session, Madam Speaker, I moved an amendment to have county governments protected under the Government Proceedings Act, because in the transition between Local Government Act and the County Governments Act, Madam Speaker, we forgot to give county governments the same immunity local governments used to have. The result, Madam Speaker, is that debtors of the previous councils began attaching goods of county governments. Yet, it is a government as understood under the Constitution. So this is yet another gap. I am going to be proposing, and I have sought the opinion and the concurrence of the mover, Senator Cheriot, and I'm very pleased by this gentleman, that first we have another amendment to cater for deputy governors, that's one. The second one I want to propose is a very strange thing. In the County Public Service Board, the secretary, who is the CEO, is not a member. Is not supposed to sit. It's not express. So some speakers who don't like the secretaries, chairpersons who don't like the secretary, invite the secretary others don't. So you can imagine these county public service boards that we are passing here, their chairpersons, their secretaries who do not sit in the deliberations of who is going to be hired or not. There are petitions coming. There is an issue in Bomet. How did the County Public Service Board end up employing 3,500 staff just before elections? If there was a human resource person sitting as chair, we will be holding that person to account, because under standards of recruiting, they would know what to do. Senator Nyeri is also a person I am addressing. One of the counties that is suffering out of human resource in terms of the expenditure is Nyeri County. They're spending 85% or more of their shareable revenue paying workers. The professional county service board chairperson would, at the first instance, advise the county government to freeze the recruitment of workers until they do the audit. That applies to Nairobi, that applies to Mombasa. Mombasa and Nairobi are without limitation the dirtiest cities possibly in this region. Why? And yet they claim, just like Nyeri, that they're spending a lot of money paying workers. What do they pay these workers to do? I expect that this professional that we're including as a professional, that professional would advise a county government that please audit the workers. Please check street on Kenyatta Avenue, who is supposed to be assigned to make sure that the flowers are watered, who is supposed to ensure that the rivers that are going across Nairobi are cleaned. How do we account? Because the previous section that we are seeking to amend just hired a person who has a degree. So governors and others have proposed people who are sitting in these positions who just have a normal degree. It could be a degree in catering. It could be a degree in veterinary. I have no problem with veterinarians, but I mean, surely. When we were impeaching your governor, Gachagua, the late Gachagua, may his soul rest in peace, one of the allegations and accusations then was that your acting CEC, Senator Nyeri, was a veterinary doctor and not as opposed to a finance person. So what is the issue? Because the law requires that the CEC finance must be a person qualified in financial matters. So if counties are spending up to 70 or 80%, and we were at CRA today, I was expecting that the senator of Taita would be here. They are only spending 15% of their shareable revenue on development. 85% of the revenue we are sending to Taita Taveta and many other counties is going to employment. Isn't it time we started doing those audits? And it is these county chairpersons of County Public Service Board that are recruiting political advisors. I don't know what a political advisor is supposed to do. They are hiring legal advisors. I don't know what a legal advisor is supposed to do, as opposed to a county attorney. They are hiring economic advisors. They are hiring fashion designers. They are hiring all sorts of advisors. It is these persons. When we hire a professional who is subject to the standards and who is subject to the professional standards like lawyers and architects and surveyors and engineers, like the Senator of Nyeri, he will be able to answer the questions, not only before the county government, but answer before the professional organization. So just to say that I support this amendment and many amendments, and I hope that the committee led by Senator Kinyua can actually audit the County Governments Act. Do we need to have 10, 5, 6 amendments? Because this is possibly, the Senator Murkomen has proposed amendments. I have amendments. Senator Cheriot has got amendments. Maybe another senator will come up with another amendments. In the last session, we had almost 6, 7 amendments from a raft of senators. Is it time to start interrogating this? While we do so, this morning we were asked the question, what happened to the county boards that we passed in the Senate, or passed in the National Assembly, and then signed into law by His Excellency, President Uhuru Kenyatta? Why should we pass laws, and then we are stifled by governors who do not want senators to have any role in counties, And then we continue making amendments instead of going back to ask, what is it? What is it that we have done before? What is the problem? Where is this matter in the Court of Appeal? How can we intervene to see senators making meaningful intervention in counties where we belong? We are strangers in our counties. Why? Because all avenues and doors have been locked. We take pride in making this law, but we have no role. In places we have been elected. I've heard people saying some were elected by 1 million votes, others 300,000. I was elected by 300,000, 97 point something % of the vote. But when it comes to Matters County, senators, just like me, you stay in the periphery and cheer like you're cheering the World Cup. Madam Speaker, these amendments are important, but my view is that can the committee interrogate a lot of these things so that we can cover all the gaps? Impeachment of speakers, impeachment of CECs. Members, you might not know, governors have become powerless in their counties. You appoint a CEC, the CEC misappropriate funds, you suspend him, and they go to court, obtain an injunction. They work at the pleasure of the court. Can we, as senators, start interrogating these matters so that we can find a formula? Machakos County is in a stalemate. They refused to approve 5 CECs. The governor went and appointed the 5 CECs, irrespective of the county assembly. Nothing in this act says what the recourse is. Are these people in office illegally or not? Those caveats ought to be in the law so that we can protect counties in the true sense of the word. I'm glad the senator of Laikipia, Senator Kinyo, and the chair of devolved government is here, because I was saying that we must audit the County Governments Act, see whether your committee can propose a raft of amendments to take care of all the lacunas that have appeared in the past and anticipate in future what is going to happen when these governors leave office, particularly the second-term governors. From what I gather, these people will go to Dubai, the Isles of Man, and many other places, including Baroda, if we do not take action. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Chair. Senator Makori Beatrice Kwamboka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank the Senator Aaron Cheriot, and I support the amendment bill. Indeed, he has come up with good amendments, like in section 32D on the deputy governor. It is well indicated very well, the procedures on how to, the timelines on how to appoint a deputy governor. And Madam Speaker, I would urge the senator to come up with to add another amendment on how to appoint a deputy governor and give timelines. Like in Nairobi County, we have the governor, and it's not well put in place as it is on how long does it take for a governor to appoint his deputy after resigning. So, Madam Speaker, I'll urge the senator to add more amendments on that. And Madam Speaker, I support fully on section 14 on the Principal Act by inserting the following new subsection immediately after subsection 2 on the governor shall, for the purpose of the competitive recruitment of a county secretary, under subsection 2, constitute a selection panel in accordance with section 58A2, where it was not there previously. This one will bring more people to compete for that position. And Madam Speaker, on section 58, on the composition of the County Public Service Board, the member has come up fully with the procedures on how, wherever there is a vacancy arises in the County Public Service Board, The governor shall constitute a selection panel for the purpose of selecting suitable candidates for appointment as members of the County Public Service Board by adding more members, like one person nominated by governor from the private sector, which will be pushing and protecting the interests of the private sector, and another one person nominated by the Federation of Kenya Employers, which will protect the employers of this country, Madam Speaker, which previously it was not there. So, Madam Speaker, I support this amendment bill, and in addition that the senator put and adds the amendment on the timeline of the appointing of the deputy governor in case the deputy governor resigns. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very good. Senator John Deritu John Kinyua.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From onset, I want to congratulate Senator Cheriot from Kericho for bringing this amendment. And one is, if you look at Article 58, subsection 1D, Roman 2, he has brought in the issue of professionalism. Previously, there was nothing like that was being considered. The governor could pick his friends or any other person that he deemed fit. But with this amendment that is brought, now we are putting in professionalism in the board. He's also considering the youth, because previously there was requirement that you needed to have 10 years experience, but that one has been reduced to 5 years, which takes care of the youth of this country, because even the youth have the capacity and the ability to lead in this country. So for that, I strongly support him. And having listened to him, this board, it is crucial for running of activities in the county, by virtue that they are the ones that employ people who will be working in the county. And if we get the board that's not professional, so is the county will have, they normally say, if you give peanuts, you get monkeys. So with this one, at least we're going to get professionals who will be doing the work diligently in the county. We have also he has also put the limit of the time that is non-renewable, such that we'll give time for other people who can really do the work to be available. Once the term of these people has expired for 6 years, you can have other people doing that kind of job. So I stand to support, and this is a very good amendment, and I support. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Cheriot, I think it's your turn to reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to thank my colleagues who have contributed to this bill, and in listening to them, the line that we share is that there is genuine concern among us senators in this House that we need to professionalize how our counties are being run and infuse into the county public service boards the true sense of duty that can only be gotten by ensuring that professional human resource minds that are trained to understand that human resource is an extremely important resource for any county that wants to thrive and achieve its full potential. And therefore, I have taken time to note down all the concerns that have been raised by colleagues, proposed amendments, ideas, thoughts. There are those who are in support in its entirety and feel that perhaps maybe there may be need for additional amendments to the County Government Act. I've listened to the contributions from my colleague, distinguished Senator Kwamboka, about the timelines that we want to include for the period in which county government can stay without a deputy governor. I have listened to colleagues also speak about, and this was particularly raised by, I think, Senator Mutula, that we need to also add into the amendment consideration of the office of the Deputy Speaker in our county assemblies. Madam Speaker, it is worth noting that up to date, many of our Deputy Speakers continue to face ridicule, as they are sometimes reminded by their colleague that after all, despite occupying an extremely important position in our county government structure, that their positions are not recognized anywhere in law. And therefore, as the House that is expected to legislate and think through the proposal that comes from our county government and try to streamline, at least legally, the operations of our county governments, I will be moving all those amendments, as many of them are straightforward and perhaps need to be included. And therefore, Madam Speaker, with all those many remarks, I want to thank my colleagues who found time to read through the bill and give a worthy response to it. In concluding, Madam Speaker, I only want to request that pursuant to Standing Order number 55.3, I want to request that the putting of the question on this bill be deferred to another day. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes, I think we'll defer it to tomorrow. Thank you. Next motion. Next order.
Order number 14, the Local Content Bill, Senate Bills number 10 of 2018.
The order number 14 will be deferred because Senator Moi has requested that it is deferred. Next order.
Order number 15, motion, need to review and evaluate the state of education in northern Kenya.
Senator Abdullahi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In reply to the motion, I'm grateful for the members for discussing this motion yesterday, and we discussed it properly, and I'm happy that at least most of the issues has come out. I also want to just state that in the case of the northern parts of Kenya with all its problems, that the Ministry of Education should look into issues of university education, not only the secondary and the primary, to be given at least some quota systems. And sometimes back there's the issue of quota systems. Many of the members have mentioned about the issue of discipline, which is true. Students who lack discipline, teachers who mention a lot of problems. Because of our cultures and the religious aspects, there are some issues the teachers mentioned which is not possible, especially like rape and issues of sexual harassment. Those ones are not possible in those areas, even if in isolated cases things are possible. But I want to thank most of the members who contributed to this motion, and they have talked about it widely and in a very appropriate manner. I hope the committee will look into it properly, and the committee have been informed are going to the northern parts soon. I will hope that they will get hold of the stakeholders and involve the leadership when they visit those areas, so that we are able to work together and perform what is required so that the people and the children of northern Kenya get proper education. I thank the Speaker. Thank you.
Aware that, I will now put the question that aware that Article 43F of the Constitution of Kenya stipulates that every person has the right to education, and Article 53, 1b provides that every child has the right to free and compulsory basic education. Also aware that education is a basic need and a tool for intellectual empowerment and socio-political development, further aware that education is a shared function between the national and county levels of government, with the national government being responsible for primary, secondary, and higher education, while the county government is responsible for the pre-primary education, village polytechnics, and home craft centers. Cognizant that both levels of government complement each other in promoting sustainable education, concerned that the intake, uptake, and quality of education in the northern Kenya have adversely been affected owing to discrepancies in public resources allocation, insecurity, skilled staffing, and teacher training in the region. Further concerned that both the school completion rate and the national examination outcomes in region are poor, and the number of students from northern Kenya who qualify for core courses in universities, colleges, technical schools, village polytechnics is minimal compared to other parts of the country. Noting with concern that due to the insecurity and other related concerns, the Teachers Service Commission, TSC, which is the body responsible for the employment and deployment of teachers, has in the recent past taken steps to transfer non-local teachers from the northern region of Kenya to other parts of the country. Concerned that the transfers have led to shortage of skilled teachers, which has been a major cause of dismissal, dismal performance in examinations in schools in the region. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves to take the Standing Committee on Education to conduct an inquiry into the challenges facing the education sector in northern Kenya with a view to, 1, evaluating the effect of the teacher transfers from the region and recommending to the Ministry of Education policy measures to address the challenge. 2, evaluating the status of the education infrastructure in the region and proposing solutions to mitigate the current and looming challenges. 3, proposing mechanisms for enhanced resource allocation at both levels of government, completing levels in the region in order to ascertain the impact of the challenges facing the schools and how this disadvantages the region compared to other parts of Kenya, and proposing ways of addressing the challenges. And now that the committee submits a report to the Senate within 3 months of adoption of this motion by the Senate, will as many as of the opinion say aye? Aye. And those of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 16, motion. Report of the Sessional Committee on County Public Accounts and Investments on Financial Operations of the Nakuru County Executive for the financial year 2013-2014.
Motion number 16 deferred. Next order.
Order number 17, motion. Report of the Sessional Committee on County Public Accounts and Investments on Financial Operations of the Kilifi County Executive for financial year 2013-2014.
Motion number 17 deferred. Next order.
Order number 18, motion. Report of the Sessional Committee on County Public Accounts and Investments on Financial Operations of the Homa Bay County Executive for financial year 2013-2014.
Order number 18 deferred. Next order.
Order number 19, motion. Report of the Sessional Committee on County Public Accounts and Investments on Financial Operations of the Kisii County Executive for financial year 2013-2014.
Order number 19 deferred. Next order.
Order number 20, motion. Approval of senators to serve in the select committees.
Order number 20 deferred. Next order.
Order number 21, motion. Management of construction contractors.
Order number 21 is open to debate. Any senator who has interest on this debate, you are free to contribute. Honorable Senators, it seems as if there is no interest on motion number 21, and Senator Sylvia Kasanga is not present to reply, so maybe she has forfeited that opportunity. So we will put the question. I put the question. That aware that Section 15 of the National Construction Authority, NCA, Act prescribes the requirements for registration as a contractor. Also aware that Section 18 of the Act mandates the NCA board to accredit firms incorporated outside Kenya to carry out construction works in Kenya for a prescribed period. Concerned that a large number of registered local contractors cannot perform up to the expected standard, leading to collapsed building, poor county roads and infrastructure, and incomplete contracts. Appreciating that there is still a good number of local contractors that has demonstrated capacity to perform and deliver projects as required. Deeply concerned that foreign contractors are now engaging in projects that local contractors have equal capacity and skills to perform, especially in the counties. Recognizing that there is need to grow our local industry by giving job opportunities to Kenyan citizens and building their technical capacities. Now, therefore, the Senate calls upon the government through the NCA to, 1, conduct a fresh registration drive of all building and infrastructure contractors in order to weed out all non-performing ones and to identify those who demonstrate compliance. 2, enforce strict insight on foreign contractors and institute a mechanism to hold compliance raised against contractors. 3, ensure that foreign contractors are only awarded contracts that local contractors cannot handle and require them to include technology transfer to locals. And 4, require both local and foreign contractors to undertake corporate social responsibilities activities in the counties where they operate. Will as many as are of the opinion say aye? And those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 22, motion, flood situation in the country.
The mover of that motion is not present, so we defy it. Under the circumstances, now we adjourn. Honorable Senators, having concluded the business of the day, it is now time to adjourn the House. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until tomorrow, Thursday, 2nd August 2018 at 2:30 p.m.